Silence in church. Sally sat in church looking around and hoping that someone else her age would show up. Sally is the only teenager attending her church now. There are 19 high school and junior high school members, but they have not been to church in a long time. After church, Sally went home and got on the Christian chat line on the internet. Sally chatted with 10 or more people that night. The others were telling of what their church was doing to invite the community to church, as well as helping out those in need. Sally had nothing to talk about then, because her church was involved in nothing in the community. A girl from Texas asked Sally for the website of her church. Sally replied, "Sorry, our church doesn't have a website." The church from Texas said, "Well, why don't you get the other youth together and fix one up for your church?" And Sally said, "That's a great idea. Thank you so much. Maybe I can get the others back in church with this idea." Sally called all of the youth members and asked if they would want to help fix a web page for their church. They all said yes, and they were very excited about it. They each started searching for churches on the internet to get ideas for their church. The first thing they noticed was that out of the hundreds of churches in the area, that only 2 had websites already. This actually excited them a little bit, kind of like what Columbus felt when he reached America. They decided to work on this and keep it a secret until it was finished. It took a couple of weeks, and they worked really hard in putting it together. They wouldn't settle for a good website. They insisted on trying to make theirs the best there ever was. Finally, it was finished. There was a page after page of great things on the site. All 19 of the youth had made a contribution somewhere on the site. There was Bible crosswords puzzles, Bible trivia, Bible games for young children to play, Bible search to help anyone find a Bible verse if they needed to find one. There was truly a page for everyone. They also took a great picture on Tuesday afternoon of their church with all 19 of them lined up in front of the church, smiling as big as they could. They were so happy, the smiles came naturally and took very little effort. They placed the picture at the front of the website to show their joy as well as the church. The next day was Wednesday, and it was the Wednesday that the church held business meetings after the services. So all the youth attended, and they elected Sally to announce the website to the church during the business meeting, since she was the one who got them all together in the first place. Wednesday night, they sat through service, and the preacher commented on how nice it was to see the youth back in church. Everyone turned and looked at the youth, nodded their heads yes with smiles on their faces. When the business meeting started, they asked if there was any new business. Sally stood up and said, "Yes, the youth has new business." Another church member said, "A woman should keep silent in church." Sally started to say, then there shouldn't be women in the choir, but she didn't, and she sat down and looked at the other youth. Bobby stood up and said, "The youth fixed up a website for the church on the internet, and we wanted you all to take a look at it." Preacher said, "Well, that is certainly something to pray about. Is there any other new business?" Bobby stood up again and said, "We have already put it together and it looks great." One of the deacons stood up and said, "The church would have to get together and vote on what they want on a website, even if they wanted to have a website." After the business meeting, no one even spoke to any of the youth as they left the church. The following Sunday, there was no youth in church. The youth meet in Sally's house instead of at church. They all gathered around the computer screen with tears running down their sweet faces. They bowed their heads for a moment in prayer, and they watched the computer screen as Sally pushed the delete button. The screen went black, and the website was gone. The church had made it very clear, as they had so many times in the past, that the youth was to be seen and not heard in church. Later that night, Sally had a dream. In that dream, Jesus was sitting at the computer looking over the website, and all the youth was gathered around him watching. Jesus turned and spoke to them, saying, "I have seen your website, and so has the Father. In you he is well pleased, and I know you. Them I never knew. Let not your hearts be in sorrow. Rejoice that you have pleased God in your works. Those without works are without reward from heaven." The next morning, when Sally awoke, she called each of the others on the phone only to find out that each and everyone had the same dream that night. They said, "We will just have to fix a website without calling it a church site." And so they did. They also attended a different church from then on. The other church is now a youth church.